Hello, I'm William Law, and you're listening to the Arab Digest podcast. As well as our podcast, Arab Digest has a daily reader-supported newsletter providing unique insights into the Middle East and North Africa. Check out our website at arabdigest.org. Our newsletter features a top team of the very best analysts, commentators, and writers. And we're offering you 2 months of the newsletter for free. So why not make Arab Digest your go-to source for an objective, independent analysis of the Arab world? That's arabdigest.org. My guest today is the Yemeni analyst Maysaa Shuja al-Deen, a senior researcher at Sana'a Center for Strategic Studies. Maysaa, it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Bill, for having me.
Now, Sana'a has experienced 2 recent Israeli strikes, the first on 30th of August that killed the Huthi prime minister and several ministers, and the second on the 10th of September that reportedly killed dozens of civilians. I'm just wondering, what impact have those attacks had on the people living in Sana'a?
These attacks were an awful reminder for the people. Sana'a received tens of thousands of attacks for almost 7 years by the Saudi-led coalition that killed thousands and destroyed the infrastructure of the poor country. However, the people, they are more anxious or more afraid from the Israeli attacks because the Israelis, through their behaviors or their attacks in Yemen and elsewhere, they behave in the sense of feeling of impunity. So, for example, they attack the lifeline of the people under the Houthi-controlled areas like al-Hudaydah port many times. Al-Hudaydah port is very important for them. It is the place that they can get their food, humanitarian aids. And if it's become unable to work or to function, it may cause a serious humanitarian disaster on the people in these areas. So this feeling of impunity makes the people more afraid from the consequences of these airstrikes. In addition, that's the feeling that the people, they are afraid that the economic situation is getting worse and no one cares. The humanitarian aid in Yemen decreased, and definitely the economic situation has become really dire the last few years. And the worst is the Houthi oppression has been increased because they are panicked and they are afraid of repeating the scenario of Hezbollah.
The Israelis decapitated the Hezbollah leadership and degraded its military capabilities significantly.
So they suspect everyone. They made like hundreds of arrests last weeks. And some of them, they are random arrests. And they are not able to contact their families. And definitely everything is, in this arrest is not legal. All of these arrests have not passed through any legal process. So they just disappeared for their families. So it's very difficult for the people. The situation is really getting worse. And the worst part here is that the confrontation between the Houthis and Israelis is likely to escalate in the next month or the next weeks and months.
Yeah, and as you say, the anxiety that people are feeling because the Israelis have shown themselves to act with impunity. They basically are prepared to cross any red line. But I'm wondering, Maysaa, what is the impact on the Houthi leadership? Because the Israelis say they want to go after the leadership. They deem the Houthis a terrorist organization. They want to decapitate the leadership, presumably the way they've tried to kill the leadership and have killed the leadership and Hezbollah and Hamas. But what is the situation for the Houthi leadership? And perhaps you can give us a sense of the structure of that leadership and also the ideology that's behind it.
About the Houthi leadership, I think they start to be more afraid from what happened in Hezbollah.
And when that airstrike killed the prime minister?
When they target the whole government of the Houthis, it was an indication of a serious breakthrough, Israeli breakthrough within the group, which makes them more suspicious about who's dealing with the Israeli in their areas. And uh, definitely this government is a civil face for the Houthis. Most of them, they are not important. The Houthi group is mainly a military group. So for them, those civilians who work with them, they are not always important because it is a group that emerged through wars. It is a Zaydi group.
And what is the Zaydi doctrine?
Zaydi doctrine in Yemen is it is a Shia sect. It is the smallest Shia sect in the world. Almost it only exists in Yemen. And in Yemen, the Zaydi doctrine is also overlapping with the geographical identity, with tribal identity, because it only exists in the north of Yemen, mainly north of Sana'a. So it has a certain region, which is called a Zaydi region. And also the Houthis, as a group, they are from far north on the borders with the Saudi Arabia, from Saada. So the leadership is mainly about Abdul-Malik al-Houthi because it is a very centralized group, and Abdul-Malik al-Houthi enjoys an absolute power, an absolute authority within the group. And this authority is not only political authority, it is also religious one or spiritual one. They believe that his power is a divine, and he is chosen by God. And they believe in this theocratic idea. They strongly believe in it. However, their relationship with the traditional Zaydi scholars is not that good. The traditional Zaydi scholars question the legitimacy of Abdul-Malik al-Houthi for many reasons, mainly because the leadership for the Zaydis should have some conditions that Abdul-Malik al-Houthi don't have, mainly the knowledge, the religious knowledge.
The point you make is an important one, that within the Houthi themselves, there are contestations about the extent to which Abdul-Malik al-Houthi is the leader, the legitimate leader. Those are religious in nature. But my question now really is about the strategy that the Houthis are pursuing, because they say until the war in Gaza stops, they will continue drone and missile attacks on Israel. I mean, I'm wondering what you make of that strategy. And do you think that they would at any point give it up? Because the war in Gaza, Netanyahu has said he's going to continue that war. So will the Houthis continue their attacks? In which case, the people of Yemen will continue to suffer from Israeli attacks.
For the Houthi strategy, the Houthis, they are very reckless, and they don't have that strong sense of responsibility towards the people under their control. And they have ambitious. They are very ambitious, and they have ambitious beyond Yemen. They are a transnational group who believe that they have a role to play outside of Yemen. And it's very clear that they are very happy with the popularity that they gain from their strikes in the Israeli state, especially that this strikes came within the whole world is silent about the whole world is silent, and no state has taken any action against the Israeli state that can stop them from crossing all the borders in Gaza. So there is a big admiration to the Houthis, even beyond the Arab countries, beyond the Muslim countries, even to some Western countries and everywhere. And they are very happy, and they feel this proof that they are on the right path. So I don't think they are going to stop, especially that the Houthis, they always feel more comfortable in the situation of war because they grow up through wars. they grew up as a group through their 6 years wars with the government, and then they continued fighting to expand their territories. And then they fought the Saudi military-led coalition. And when they fought this coalition in 2015, when the fighting started, the Houthis raised to the power a few months before that. And their legitimacy was under question because they raised to power by violence, spoiled the political process, and this war granted them a kind of legitimacy. After the truce with the Saudis in April 2022, they faced really strong situation because the question of governance, and they are not good governors. They can't handle the economy. They collect many taxes and they didn't give anything in return, like services or salaries or anything. And they are corrupt. People start to, the streets start to move against them despite the feeling of fear and their oppression. So when the Gaza war comes, it's like a gift for them to save them from this difficult situation and the economic situation and the questions of legitimacy and governance and all of this. So keeping the people under control in the situation for war and the situation of war is much easier for them, in addition of their regional ambitions, of their even global ambitions.
Yeah, that's interesting, as you say, about their ambitions, their regional ambitions, even their global ambitions. It's called a messianic feel to it, but also that the Houthis, like Netanyahu, see advantage in continuing on a war footing. My next question, Maysaa, is the extent to which the Houthis are under the influence of Iran, because that's what's constantly raised, that the Houthis are a proxy for Iran, and the axis of resistance is not ultimately degraded unless the Houthis are also part of that degradation. So, how much influence does Iran have with the Houthis?
The Houthis always admired the Iranian revolution. They have that strong admiration to the Iranian revolutionary model. And they borrowed many terms and part of their discourse. And they always try to see this model as it is a model that they want to be like in the very beginning, in the early stages of the Houthis. But now the Houthis start to develop their own model even. They don't share the same religious reference with Iran, definitely, and they are economically somehow independent. They don't need it. They have their own resources because they have geography. They have a big population under their control, almost not less than 15 million people under their control. So they have their own resources, and they can say they are the strongest arm for Iran in the region. But they don't share the same religious reference, unlike Hezbollah, for example, and the Shia Iraqi factions. However, there is an Iranian influence on them, especially in the military decisions and the regional decisions, because they need Iran. Iran provides them training and weapons for almost more than 1 decade and even more. And the support, Iranian support, was in the first, during Saada wars between the Houthis and the government. It was through Hezbollah, but then it became a direct relationship because the importance of Houthis has grown for the Iranian. And now they are the last remaining Iranian arm in the region. And the Houthis, they start to feel they can lead, and they can even become not also Hezbollah, but they can even become something even bigger. And Abdul-Malik al-Houthi believes that, like Hassan Nasrallah, who was the Arab leader who represents the Iranian revolution, that he can take his place and maybe more and bigger because he has more capabilities. So I think they start to be more even independent, and their importance for Iran increased and their importance in general increased for many people, even Russia, China, and others. So I think the Houthis and their relationship in Iran can be simply described. It is a growing relationship, a strong relationship until now.
You're listening to the Arab Digest podcast with me, William Law, and Maysaa Shuja al-Deen, a senior researcher at Sanaa Center for Strategic Studies. Arab Digest has a daily newsletter, your go-to source for independent analysis and fresh insights into the Middle East and North Africa. Head to our website, arabdigest.org, where you can find details on how to get our daily newsletter for 2 months for free. That's right, 2 months for free. Check us out at arabdigest.org. Now, in the past, the Houthis have targeted both Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but those attacks have stopped. But I wonder right now how you currently see the Houthi relationship with the Gulf states. What is the sense there about how the Houthis feel about the Gulf states, and indeed how the Gulf states feel about the Houthis?
The Houthis, I mean, when they attack UAE and Saudi Arabia, they attack them in the context of fighting between them and the Saudi-led coalition because the Saudis and the Emiratis interfered in Yemen, and there was a military intervention from them. Maybe the biggest attack on the Emiratis when they attack the Abu Dhabi airport, and they attack also Aramco in Saudi Arabia, which was a turning point in the Yemeni war between 2015 until 2022. However, I can say that the Houthis, in their relationship with the Gulf state is different based on the state. I mean, the Gulf state here is not one block. For them, the Emiratis, for example, UAE, they think that the Houthi is still a strategic threat that should be defeated. And they pushed for a military operation, for a big military operation against them, ground military operation, because they believe the airstrikes are not useful in dealing with the Houthis. So they have some factions on the ground, some military factions, Yemeni factions on the ground. And they believe that empowering this Yemeni military factions, they are anti-Houthis, may help in pushing the Houthis from the coast, in weakening them, in defeating them. And so they pushed for this military operation, but still the Saudis, they are not totally convinced, because since the truce, the Saudis, they are very busy to stabilize their security. They don't want any Houthi missile that can spoil their economic ambitions. They don't want only a military operation just to weaken the Houthis. By the end of the day, this means that the Houthis will remain on their borders. And at the same time, this will threaten their security. Also, it may empower the UAE factions or the Yemeni factions that are affiliated to UAE, which means that it will strengthen the position of UAE on their borders. This is another Saudi concern. So they don't want to escalate the situation with the Houthis, but at the same time, they are not comfortable with this situation. They felt that the Houthis, they are reckless. The relationship between Yemen and Saudi Arabia is always tense in general. However, on the other side, we have other Gulf countries. They don't see the Houthis as threat. For example, Oman, they have good relationship with the Houthis. They facilitate smuggling weapons to the Houthis because they are afraid from the growing presence of the UAE and Saudi Arabia on their neighborhood. So they are much closer to the Houthis, and they host the Houthi delegation in Muscat.
And Qatar?
For the Qataris also, they were mediator during Saada wars. So they have good relationship with the Houthis, but they were part of the Saudi-led coalition in the first 2 years before the rift between them and the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
That was the land, air, and sea blockade launched by the Saudis and the Emiratis in 2017.
At that time, they start to be close to the Houthis and provided them some money. And the Qatari media, in its coverage, they become in favor of the Houthis. And now, after what happened on 7th of October, its media is always with any action against Israel, including the Houthi myself. So I'm not sure what will happen after the airstrike, the Israeli airstrikes on Qatar, because this means that they may look to the Houthis to empower them more, to make them more strong, and or to revenge against the Israelis through the Houthis. It could be something might happen, might not. But I can say that in Yemen, Yemen is part of it. It's not also a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It's also a proxy war between the different Gulf countries and their different agendas in Yemen. Because also there's a competition between UAE and Saudi Arabia, although they were members in the same coalition against the Houthis. And also there is a kind of concerns from the Omanis and Qataris and all of this. So
it's a mixed picture, isn't it? And that's very interesting what you said about Qatar and of course with that Israeli strike on Doha. I'm just wondering how concerned you are that the Israelis may indeed carry out and expand its military operations into Yemen itself. Is that a threat that the Israelis, because they're unchecked by Donald Trump and Netanyahu is clearly off the lead. Is there a possibility that the Israelis will significantly expand their military operations into Yemen itself?
I'm not sure. Always when you talk about the confrontation between the Israelis and the Houthis, we should not forget there are 2,000 kilometers between the two parties. So this makes it difficult for both of them, especially the Houthis. And the Israelis, the airstrikes never weakened the Houthis. I mean, the Houthis, they received like tens of thousands of airstrikes throughout the years of the military intervention of the Saudis and UAE. So this will not weaken them alone. But something like a ground intervention, I don't think the Israelis, they are willing to do this at all. It's impossible. Because all of the historical interventions in Yemen, historically, everyone interfered in Yemen, ground intervention, it was not something easy for them. It is a mountainous country, armed society. It's something similar to Afghanistan. Like, for example, the Ottomans, they sent many troops to Yemen, and sometimes they all disappeared inside of Yemen. The Egyptian army interfered in Yemen in the 60s, and it was a very painful experience for them. And they lost almost 15,000 soldiers inside of Yemen. So Yemen is not a country that anyone can interfere on it, and especially Israel. No one in Yemen likes Israel. All of the Yemenis look to Israel as enemy, regardless of their position towards the Houthis.
Well, finally then, Maysaa, let's look at the peace process. There's been talk, a lot of talk, and sometimes not very much talk, but certainly very little achieved. Do you have any hopes that a deal can come anytime soon, or do you see the current condition of a static war with the threat of Israel always looming? Do you see that continuing into the future?
Yeah, it seems, unfortunately, the situation in Yemen is not, it doesn't seem it's going to de-escalate, and the question and the peace process is not in the mind of anyone. The Houthis, they are overconfident now, and they don't think they are in a position to give any concessions for the other factions, mainly the Yemeni factions, unfortunately, because they thought that they don't need to deal with the Yemeni factions. So when they even negotiated with the Saudis after the truce, both parties ignored the Yemeni divisions. which make any kind of peace agreement between even the Saudis and the Houthis at that time, when there was potential agreement between them, which will make it an agreement that will not reflect mainly on the Yemenis. It just will get out the Saudis from the scene of the Yemeni war, but the Yemen will remain that fragmented and dividing country. And the situation is, in its best cases, no war and no peace, but can be turned to a war at any time. Definitely the Saudis were close to sign an agreement, or not to sign, to push the Yemeni factions to sign an agreement with the Houthis, which was called the roadmap. But it became a red line for the US because they felt that this agreement will reward the Houthis for their actions in the Red Sea. And it's not now, it's outdated agreement for them. Also, another problem, there is imbalance of power between the Houthis and the non-Houthi and the anti-Houthi camp. This imbalance of power, because of the military capabilities of the Houthis, are much stronger. And also the anti-Houthi camp is very dividing and fragmented. And still the situation is not clear. There is any kind of talk about peace process, and no one has even a clear vision how the Yemeni states should look like after the war. The Houthi vision is very religious and doesn't suit most of the Yemenis. Many Yemenis don't accept this kind of religious vision of the Yemeni state. And the anti-Houthi camp is also dividing how it will look like. Some of them, they want different independent states. Some of them, they want decentralized state. And it's not clear for anyone how they can implement that. So I think still the political division are still very strong between the different Yemeni entities. And the Yemeni war has become not Yemeni war. It become regional war, and then now maybe a global war because of what's happening in the region. Israeli intervention, the US and the UK airstrikes last year, and the US strikes in this year also before the agreement between them and the Houthis. And there is a growing support from China, from Russia. So I'm not sure it is still in the hand of the Yemenis, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a grim scenario, isn't it, Maysaa? And of course, the people of Yemen are the ones that pay by far the heaviest price. Well, I thank you. I thank you for speaking with me today, and I know we'll come back to you again in the future, and we can but hope that that future is a better one for the Yemeni people. Thank you so much, Maysaa.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Arab Digest podcast. My guest today was Maysaa Shuja al-Deen, a senior researcher at Sana'a Center for Strategic Studies. As the multiple crises in the Middle East continue to accelerate at an alarming speed, getting a grip on what is happening has never been more important. That's what Arab Digest does with the podcast and our daily newsletter. Here at the Digest, we have a team of analysts, commentators, and writers, contributors like Maysaa, providing acute insights and fresh perspectives you simply are not going to find anywhere else. And here's something else worth considering. We are an independent voice, no sponsors and no advertising. Our funding comes only from our subscribers. If you'd like to support that independent voice and plug into everything Arab Digest has to offer, head to our website at arabdigest.org, where we have a free 2-month trial to the newsletter on offer. Follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, and search our library of more than 300 podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or other platforms. Thank you for listening. I'm William Law, editor of the Arab Digest. Essential reading, essential listening from independent sources.